Good evening, my friends. This is Steve with Real Progressives. And before we get into tonight's meat of the discussion, I want to get some housekeeping out of the way. First things first, folks, this right here, this Macro and Cheese is our podcast. And for those of you who ever wanted to know about economics, especially empowering the progressive movement, we cover it all. Please go to our website for our podcast. It is www.macroandcheese.com. Now, the next part of this is going to be discussing the student debt crisis. I know this topic is very difficult for some people to get a hold of. But why? Because let's be fair. When we talk about debts, when our parents talk to us about our debts, when we talked about Game of Thrones and we heard about Lannisters always pay their debts, et cetera. This whole idea of paying debt has been, just ingrained in us, which, in some ways is a good thing because we borrow things from people, we have debts to people, and there's a matter of keeping our word, right? So this is all, founded in some sort of sense, except when the circumstances are such that there really isn't a fair bargain. This isn't really a situation where there's any form of equity in this. Back in the day when our parents and grandparents went to college, it was, pretty inexpensive. Cars were inexpensive. Wages were constantly rising. You could buy a home for under $25,000. Today, you need a down payment for a home of $25,000. Today's student debt, people are graduating with undergraduate degrees with $200,000 worth of student debt. That's no joke. And because of the way of the compounding interest rate and so forth, there's times where people will pay for 10 years and they'll look at their balance and they'll find out, oh my goodness, I owe more now than I did when I started paying on them. This is a real strong, right in your face case of usury. And it's an incredibly decapitating maneuver for an economy desperate for people to be able to spend money, to buy things, to take care of their families, etc. The debt total is up to $1.6 trillion as of right now. I think that's a pretty devastating number, to be honest with you. I think it's even more devastating when you think about the fact that people don't really understand a child coming out of college is carrying $200,000 worth of student debt, or his parents out of some obligatory move are carrying that debt for them. Regardless, this is money that is now buried in the student debt business that has been ripping people off like crazy. You see businesses subsidizing their training, education, and development by putting people into private debt and then holding them hostage to garbage jobs. In fact, it's gotten so bad, so much at-will employment, the gig economy, people sitting there with all this money all this debt are now trapped in these horrible gig jobs without benefits that can be let go at will. And really, the insecurity is so much that it is breeding a country where life just isn't all that. It's just not worth it in some cases. People are taking their own lives. Suicides are on the rise in the elderly who had to go back to school as a result of the global financial crisis, carrying the huge amount of debt that children are carrying that have their whole lives to pay them. These elderly folks are sitting there with 20 years left of their life strapped to student debt. So let's start it off with the student debt video. This was in USA Today, and I thought this video was absolutely spot on, so let's go with it.
Student loan debt in the U.S. has hit a crippling all-time high. We have the facts. $1.6 trillion. That's how much 43 million Americans owe in student loan debt. The average college senior graduates with about $30,000 in student debt, according to a College Board survey. The question on their minds, is it all worth it?
Because honestly, how are students going to pay for it? We're going to graduate with what? $200,000 in debt from undergrad.
For most Americans, a college degree is regarded as a measure of success. Yet, a post-secondary education has become cost-prohibitive for young people, even when they receive financial aid. Financial aid experts say it's not difficult to choose federal loans, since they come with low interest rates and built-in protections. However, there is a limit that caps at $31,000. At that point, student borrowers sometimes take out private loans, which have higher interest rates. But millions of people are racking up tens of thousands of dollars in debt, amassing a burden that will take decades to fully pay off. Some have even ended up homeless. A 2018 Hope Center for College Community and Justice survey found that homelessness affected 14% of those attending four-year institutions. A combination of factors including rising tuition and financial aid packages that fail to keep up with the cost of food, gas, childcare, and affordable housing have fueled the homelessness crisis among college students. In 2018, the average annual cost of attending a four-year private institution in the U.S. reached $48,510. That's more than double what it was 20 years ago. College costed 1/10 of what it does today. But because students tend to pay loans with low interest rates over a long period of time, the feds aren't making up for their losses, according to the Government Accountability Office. A USA Today Suffolk University poll found that education was one of the top 5 issues that Democratic voters want to hear candidates discuss. So Democrats running in the 2020 elections, like Senator Bernie Sanders and Senator Elizabeth Warren, are making student debt a key part of their platform, proposing largely free public higher education and forgiving most or all of the $1.6 trillion in student debt held by Americans. Given how important the issue is to voters, promises made surrounding student loans should play an important role when voters decide who will be elected in 2020.
That, my friends, was a powerful statement. Bernie and Elizabeth Warren, and now Kamala Harris, have gone ahead and put out student loan forgiveness type plans. Kamala, of course, has got this very, very tiny little window of people that will be impacted. Elizabeth Warren has hand-selected a few people, and then Bernie Sanders is just like everyone. Why is that important? Well, as you know, at Real Progressives, we support citizens' benefits. We don't support nickel and dime programs. We don't support some people get it, some people don't. We support all people getting it. And there's a good reason for that. When everybody gets it, they can't take it away. When some get it, it starts being something they could start slicing and playing games with. It's very important that we understand this, because here's the thing. The real debt that they're talking about in this video is not debt to a sovereign nation. It's debt to individuals, private individuals that cannot create that kind of money out of thin air. Even going to work at a great job isn't able to pay. It's not bringing enough money in to pay off these debts and have a home and have a family. I mean, we are literally putting a huge burden. Now, we always talk about the young people. But as I said in my intro, this didn't just affect young people. There is an incredible amount of older students that went back to school after age 35, 40, 50, that are out there looking for work, competing with these young people, and they are struggling to find work. There's all sorts of age discrimination. There's all sorts of, hey, you've been unemployed for a while, we're not hiring you. Hey, you got this great certification, but you've never done it, so we're not hiring you. And ultimately, people just can't pay these things back, but they can't discharge them either. You can't discharge these debts. And it's payable to the United States government. This is a tax. It is outrageous, and it is killing us. It's killing us. So let's go to this next part. And this one right here is important. This right here is a USA Today article that went with that video. And so what I want to do is I want to kind of talk through this a little bit with you. And I want to say it right up front. This is jarring. As you read through this, this is jarring. It's like the after picture of student loans, credit card debt, smelly cars, pawn shops to make ends meet. And it's like this story is a part of a series about Americans' financial health based on a survey provided by the FINRA Investor Education Foundation, a nonprofit dedicated to financial education and empowerment. When the Department of Education began garnishing her wages, Jen Thompson of Lansing, Michigan, knew something went terribly wrong with her student loans. Garnishing their wages, folks. This isn't like, hey, you didn't make a payment, oh well. They're literally saying we're taking your wage whether you want it or not. 2 years earlier, straining under $809 a month student loan payment, nearly the same as her mortgage, she consolidated the loans for a $295 payment with a company advertising on the radio. It turned out to be a scam, and her account went into default. The setback is one of many troubles college debt has caused. The loans have hounded her family's finances for years, putting them in credit card debt and forcing them to rely on payday loans for everyday expenses. We had to go to one of those "we finance everyone" type dealership to get a family car. We're paying 21.9% interest, says Thompson, 41. It was a smoker's vehicle. It was gross, but it was the only option we had at our price point. As presidential candidate Bernie Sanders proposes an ambitious plan to eliminate all student debt, it's important to note how the financial fortunes of college graduates diverge depending on if they are paying back student loans. People saddled with educational debt feel more financially insecure, engage in riskier money behaviors, and have more trouble making ends meet than those without loans, according to an analysis of the 2018 Financial Capabilities Study from the FINRA Investor Education Foundation, provided exclusively to the USA Today. It's even worse than borrowers who never finish their education. Having student loans is clearly associated with a lot of financial distress, says Gary Modela, research director at FINRA Foundation, and who crunched the numbers for USA Today. And those without a college degree in particular are feeling a lot of financial pain. Feeling financially stressed. Only a quarter of graduates with loans are satisfied with their finances, compared with 42% of grads with no debt. 7 in 10 of those with loans and a degree feel financially anxious, compared with only 54% of those with no loans and 58% of those who never went to college, the FINRA Foundation study found. I feel like somebody's... Well, okay. It's horrible, says Samantha Granquist, 37, of South Wales, New York. I can't understand how I've been paying hundreds of dollars for the past 7 years and still owe more than I originally borrowed, like it's some kind of scam. So student debt and distress or stress. People with student loans are more likely to feel financially stressed versus those with no loans. Percentage who are feeling financially stressed. Look at those numbers. Student loan college degree, 42%. Student loan college degree, 60%. No student loan, no college degree, 49%. Student loan, no college degree, 65%. So Granquist borrowed $20,966 to attend Erie Community College South. That scholastic juggernaut, Erie Community College South. $21,000. Jiminy Christmas. She graduated in 2012 with a degree in printing and one in web design. Since then, her monthly payment has vacillated between $10 and $200. Now she owes $21,113.73, literally more than she borrowed. Granquist is not alone in her confusion. About half of student loan borrowers didn't understand how much they would owe, the study found. Another half don't think they will pay off the student loans ever. One of the biggest things we hear is that they didn't fully understand what they were getting into, says Lisa Frankenberger, a credit counselor in Buffalo. They think this is the program I want, this is the school I want, so they sign the loan papers not realizing how that will impact their lives. Student loans and spending. People with student loans are less likely to spend their income versus those with no student loans and degrees. Percentage who are spending less than their income. No student loan, college degree, 56%. Student loan, college degree, 40%. No student loan and no college degree, 33%. Student loan, no college degree, 32%. So Granquist has taken on several jobs to help pay off her loans. I'll bet Mitt Romney'd be really thrilled with that. The real American dream, working 3 shifts. Way to go. She's a teacher's aide. She works at a gas station and caters on the side. That sounds like college money well spent, right? Similarly, Thompson says her husband works overtime and she picks up seasonal retail jobs, echoing what the FINRA survey found. Higher shares of student borrowers have side hustles than those with no college debt. 401k and insurance loans, pawn shops, and car title loans. That extra work is not often enough to keep borrowers from making financially adverse decisions. Like many others, Granquist has taken loans against her life insurance and her 401k. A quarter of grads with student loans will have borrowed from their 401ks, while another quarter have taken hardship withdrawals. The figures are worse for those with loans but no degrees. Half of these borrowers have taken a loan, while 48% have taken a hardship withdrawal. Over those saddled with student debt depend on credit cards to finance other everyday expenses while they make their loan payments. Student loans and bills. People with student loans have a harder time paying their monthly bills versus those with no loans and a degree. Percentage of those finding it difficult to pay monthly bills. No student loan, college degree, 30%. Student loan, college degree, 54%. No student loan, no college degree, 56%. And student loan, no college degree, 70%. 70% are having a tough time paying their bills. And we're not talking about, we're talking about they can't meet their obligations and they're stretched to the nth. Almost 3 in 5 borrowers with degrees have paid just the minimum, paid late or over the limit fees, got cash advances in the last year, the survey found. That share rises to 78% of those with loans but no degree. The payments are so large and coming due, they come to me and say, I need a budget. I can't make my credit card payment, Schultz says. Others turn to even riskier borrowing, such as payday lenders, pawn shops, and car title loans. According to the survey, Thompson has for Christmas gifts and school activities for her kids. Even in the public school system, things aren't free, she says. You pay to play, pay to participate, pay to eat. Community college. If Thompson could do it all over again, she would go to a community college for the first 2 years to save money. She'd also work while studying. Nearly half with the student loans wished they had gone to a cheaper college versus only 9% of graduates without loans, the FINRA Foundation survey showed. The financial strain of loans also makes it harder for Americans to save for their children. Overall, there's been a decrease in the share of Americans saving for their children's college from 2015, the previous iteration of FINRA's Foundation survey. It's almost a negative inheritance, said Matala. We could be looking at young parents postponing saving for their children's education to pay for their own loans. So then their children will have to borrow more to pay for their education. What a game, right? What a game. That's a consideration in Thompson's household. Her eldest son, Nathan, is a freshman at Michigan State University. The little savings the family had for this education was depleted after the first semester. He suggested dropping out and going to community college instead. We go back and forth, Thompson said. We don't want him to be in the same debt we're in, but we also don't want to inhibit his future. Wow, pick the noose or pick the gun. Which do you prefer, right? Anyway, that's it for that one. What I'm going to do now, as if that's not enough, is I'm going to show you Elizabeth Warren's side here. And this right here is the student crisis, debt crisis has hit black students especially hard. Here's how. Now, I'm hoping that you all take the time to understand this stuff because this is very critical. Very, very critical in sizing up presidential candidates. Bernie Sanders' plan is every student. Elizabeth Warren's, not so much. But these statistics that they quote in this article are jaw-dropping. Key points. The student debt crisis has hit black borrowers especially hard. There's structural discrimination, says Julia Barnard, a student debt expert at the Center for Responsible Lending. It's a larger civil rights issue. Now, I want to stop here for a second. Some people that I consider to be pretty bad people try to call this a white person problem. They tried to make this out to be a white people problem. Once again, neoliberal balkanization, identity politics, destroying progress. Would I call them evil? It's a word I like to use when I think of it. But regardless, this has impacted the African American community in an incredibly tough way. And so we're going to go through this to make sure that those misnomers are slaughtered with precision. So when Democratic presidential candidate Elizabeth Warren earlier this week unveiled the details of her bill to cancel student debt, she stressed how she would deliver significant financial relief to borrowers of color. The day our bill gets signed into law, that black and white wealth gap would shrink by 25 points, the Massachusetts senator said. Under the proposal introduced by Rep. James E. Clyburn, Democrat, South Carolina, borrowers with household incomes under $100,000 would get $50,000 of their student debt forgiven. That doesn't sound like Bernie's plan at all, does it? It's like, hey, I'll give you 50% off. What do you think? It's somebody that doesn't understand modern monetary theory is what it's about. That's really what it comes down to. Also appealing to conservatives who like to see people suffer just a little bit more. Black borrowers do stand to benefit greatly from Warren's bill. That's because by almost every measure, the student debt crisis has hit them especially hard. Now imagine if all their debt was written off. I wonder if that would do anything for them. Maybe. That would make Bernie Sanders' plan just a little bit better, wouldn't it? Yeah, it would make it a hell of a lot better. But let's just keep on going, shall we? The racial wealth gap is the biggest and has grown the fastest among those with college education, said Jason Houle, assistant professor of sociology at Dartmouth College. Student loan debt is potentially one thing that explains why that happened. Here's a racial disparity, and my goodness, what a huge gap that is, isn't it? I mean, it's just ridiculous how bad that is. Anyway, nearly 85% of black bachelor degree recipients carry student debt, compared to 69% of white bachelor degree recipients, according to the Center for Responsible Lending. Now, I'm going to pretty much slam the door shut on the people that claim this is a white people problem. I think that is a revolting, fact non-based assessment that could destroy the lives of so many. It's horrific to have said that. Let's say it's evil. So let's keep on going. The average white student borrower owes around $30,000. The average black borrower owes close to $34,000. White borrowers pay down their education debt at a rate of 10% a year compared to 4% for black borrowers. Nearly 38% of all black students who entered college in 2004 have defaulted on their student loans within 12 years, a rate more than 3 times as high as their white counterparts, according to the Brookings Institute. To understand why debt weighs heavier on black Americans than their white counterparts, you have to look into the past, says Julia Barnard, a student debt expert at the Center for Responsible Lending. There's structural discrimination, Barnard said. It's a larger civil rights issue. Student debt demographics. And look at this. I mean, it is preposterous how much debt. It's just ridiculous. It's crazy. It's insane. It's insane. Now, why do we get a college degree to begin with? We get a college degree because we think it's going to get us a job. We get a degree because we want to have an investment in ourselves that doesn't just vanish after 2 years like a certification does. We get a degree because it opens doors that are otherwise locked in today's shitty society. A college degree is expected. Whereas before you could go to a company and they would pay for you to get a college degree. That isn't the case anymore. It's not like that anymore. More and more people are now brought in as contractors that have no benefits, no paid time off, nothing. You get a paycheck, and if they take a day off for a sick child, they lose money. And yet, All their repayments and everything else are calculated based on their ability to pay, and so much of that goes into looking at the bottom line. And the bottom line, though, is that they've got no income security whatsoever. None. So the promise of the GI Bill, which offered tuition assistance to Americans who had served in the armed forces, went largely unfulfilled for African Americans, writes Hillary Herbold in her article, The Journal of Blacks in Higher Education. The law passed in 1944 didn't discriminate by race, at least in the education benefits provision, but its terms were interpreted one way for blacks and another for whites, Herbold writes. She tells the story of a black veteran who had a bachelor's degree, but sought to use his GI Bill benefits to complete a master's degree. The Veterans Administration denied the claim, informing him he needed no further education, Herbold writes. Even for black veterans who were offered tuition assistance by the government, there was the challenge of finding a seat on campus. Fewer historically black colleges existed back then, and other colleges set official or unofficial quotas on how many black students they would admit. White institutions in both the North and South were essentially closed to blacks in the 1940s, Herbold writes. At the University of Pennsylvania in 1946, for example, just 46 of 9,000 students were black. More African Americans are attending college today than ever before. Nearly 1 in 4 black people between the ages of 25 and 29 hold a college degree, up from 1 in 10 in 1968. As colleges become more diverse, however, they've also become exponentially more expensive. 1 year at a nonprofit 4-year college, including tuition, room, and board, currently costs $48,510 compared to $22,240 in just 2000, according to Mark Kantrowitz, the publisher of Saving for College. Funding has been dropping as the student body has been diversifying. State funding for 2- and 4-year public colleges plummeted after the Great Recession, and the cost of attendance has been shifted to the families. See, this pisses me off. This is the old-timers that got their degrees before all this, sitting there wagging their finger and talking about how, should have made better choices and pay your debts. This is bullshit. I mean, seriously, if they don't read this, if they don't hear this, you know what? I'm serious. That is infuriating. The privilege, the psychotic belief system that goes into that is so unworthy, so unhumanly indecent. And this isn't even coming from the quote-unquote establishment. This is coming from rank-and-file people staring down their nose, judging people. Evil people judging people like that. Struggling people. These folks are looking down their nose and telling them, buck up, buttercup, pay your damn debt. I did when it was $1,200. You can do it at $200,000. Sons of bitch. It pisses me off. God damn, it pisses me off. Anyway, in 2016, public colleges and universities received about 1.2 times as much revenue from states and localities as from students, compared to 3.2 times as much in 1988. Funding has been dropping as the student body has been diversifying, Barnard said. To cover these higher college tabs, students are taking on more debt. Black students have less family wealth to draw on, according to one analysis. The median wealth for white families in 2016 was $171,000, compared with $17,409 for black families. And so they often needed to borrow even more. Look at this. Look at this spike from 2004 to 2017. Look at that spike. It just goes up, 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 up. And look at the ages. Look at this. We're talking about age 60 and above right up here. Folks, 60 and above, they're carrying debt. And look, it's 50 to 59. Look at this. 40 to 49. Look at that. It's huge. 30 to 39. Folks, this is not just your kids. To make matters worse, Barnard said, black students are disproportionately targeted by for-profit colleges, which have come under scrutiny for high price tags and poor outcomes. More than a quarter of black students attended these four-year schools compared to 10% of white students. Sean Joyce was at a college fair in Greensboro, North Carolina, when someone from the Art Institute called him and his mother over to a for-profit school stand. Joyce, 17 at the time, was told by the man was interested in studying video game design. He said, "We have that." Joyce decided to attend. I was really excited, Joyce, now 30, said. It was a point of pride for me to get a degree. His mother attended college and planned to study criminal justice, but had to drop out when she became pregnant with him. Without any family savings to draw on, Joyce took out more than $60,000 in student loans. Like many other former students of the Art Institute, which at one point had 50 campuses around the country, he said the education there proved a complete disappointment. I never actually learned video game design, Joyce said. Today, he works from home, writing recorded phone messages for companies and earns around $30,000 a year. In the meantime, his student debt has ballooned to over $100,000. He's fallen behind on many of the payments, causing his credit score to tank. He doesn't qualify for car loans. Even finding a landlord to rent to him was a struggle. I'm 30, but my life feels like I'm 18 because it hasn't been able to move anywhere, Joyce said. Anyway, that's it in a nutshell. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to ask you all to think about this. This right here is a tweet from Stephanie Kelton. And this tweet is pretty powerful. She says, student debt will almost certainly come up in the debates next week. As candidates are asked to describe their proposals, count the number of ifs in their responses. If you have, and if you make less than, and if you work, and if. Only one candidate, Bernie Sanders, can give a one-if answer. If you have student loan debt, it is canceled. Ba-doom. The one-if plan. No fine print, no hidden clauses, no strings attached, no terms and conditions, no added ifs, ands, or buts. Folks, why in the world would you settle for anything less than that? Why would you settle for anything less than that? Why would you continue to burden people? Why aren't you out there in the streets fighting for this? People are killing themselves. I'm not joking. It's not just killing themselves to get work. They're killing themselves literally out of desperation. If they garnish your wage, it doesn't matter how good you are with money, you're going to lose your home. If you can't pay your student debt and your credit rating goes in the tank, you can't rent a house. This keeps spiraling and spiraling, and there's these evil people wagging their finger talking about you should make better choices. When I was a boy, I paid my debts. I already paid my student loans. Why shouldn't you? Evil, evil, evil people. Evil. Awful people. Well, it's not fair that I had to pay my bills and you don't. Evil, disgusting people. And there's one answer out there. Now, I want to explain something to you. Why is any of this possible? Jill Stein, way back in 2015, 2016, came out with student loan forgiveness. She was like, we got to get rid of student debt. She was right on the money, except, of course, on the money, because they have, of course, subscribed to the silly thing called AMI, or American Monetary Institute, which is a complete shell game in and of itself. It's a complete lie, a farce, a joke, an embarrassment. And because of their adherence to the stupid, fraudulent economic bullshit, the American Monetary Institute, full of conspiracy-laden garbage and false notions of debt, it wasn't possible. She couldn't pull it off, and they didn't understand how to explain it. And that's an unfortunate thing, because a lot of people suffered from that point to present. That said, this isn't a new idea. Thank goodness for modern monetary theory economists like Stephanie Kelton, who understand the economics that could take Jill Stein's idea of student debt, jubilee, getting rid of student debt outright and giving free college to all, and showing us how to pay for that through the lens of modern monetary theory. A sovereign nation can do great things. We don't just have to bomb the world. We can sometimes help our citizens too, right? Yeah, sometimes we can do that without it being inflationary, without it causing all sorts of hell in a handbasket, without hyperinflation. Yes, we can fucking help people. And it doesn't have to be some weird money crankery like the Green Party puts out there. It can be legitimate, real people stuff like modern monetary theory. It can be real, legit shit. And we can do it. And we need to do it because it is getting bigger and bigger and bigger. And when that bubble bursts, whew, boy, wait till you see the weeping and gnashing of teeth of that economy going south. It isn't just going to be the people with student debt. It's going to be everyone. You thought 2008, 9, 10, whatever was bad? Wait till you see this one. It's going to be biblical. Now, the last part of this, and I want to state this very clearly, if you don't understand what modern monetary theory is, if that sounded weird to you and you're not sure what I'm talking about, let me explain this to you. In 1971, the United States left the Bretton Woods Accord, which was a global gold standard. We left it. So dollars were no longer convertible to gold, meaning we were no longer pegged to a commodity. In other words, the dollar was no longer tied in value to a commodity. Now we have a sovereign, free-floating fiat currency. In other words, pieces of paper and digits in a computer. The thing that gives them value is that we tax in it. That's it. Taxes do not pay for spending. Your tax dollars would not be bailing somebody out of a student debt. That would be public money. The thing you've been lied to all this time. When we can give $750 billion to the military without blinking an eye while simultaneously reducing or cutting taxes outright, and there's no inflation at all, you should know that you've been lied to in the worst possible way. Those who claim that we got to raise taxes to pay for stuff are not telling you the truth, even when it's Bernie Sanders. He says that he's going to pay for it with a Wall Street speculation tax. Why do you think he's saying that? Two reasons. Number one, you're not understanding what modern monetary theory is, and you would roll your eyes at him if he said he's just going to do it and the country's just going to absorb it. You wouldn't know any better, so you'd start flapping around, freaking out. You'd say it was crazy. You'd say it's pie in the sky, but it's not. It's no more pie in the sky than paying $750 billion to the military while cutting taxes. Get over it. Learn. Be better. Do better. And then the last part of that. When the United States taxes, it does so as a brake or a gas pedal. It does so as a brake or a gas pedal for the economy. We already have enough tax